Hello and welcome. I'm Barkha Dutt. The world is still coming to grips with the takeover by the Taliban in Kabul, but no one will pay as high a price as women and children. And the videos that continue to emerge from the Kabul airport are devastating. Let's take a look at a big story on the program today. We're looking we're looking at women, despite threats, being at the front line of many street protests, including on Afghanistan's Independence Day, when women came out holding the flag of the Afghan Republic, one that the Taliban is refusing to recognize. The image, meanwhile, of a baby being handed forward to troops at the Kabul airport is breaking the heart of the world. This is what's happening to little children who are being separated oftentimes from their mothers. What might women be going through? Meanwhile, a very, very disturbing report from Sky News is saying that women are being burnt alive in northern Afghanistan for what the Taliban is calling bad behavior. But there continues to be a great deal of confusion as the Taliban tries to present a moderate face of itself to the world. But on government-run broadcasting stations, women who were appearing on day one are systematically being replaced by men. What is life like for women in Taliban country? Not many are being able to speak, at least while they are in Afghanistan. And the few that are doing so are women of extraordinary courage and are doing so at great risk to their lives. The Women of Afghanistan is a conversation we're shining the spotlight on. Let's bring up three incredible women on the program today. We're joined by Heather Barr. Heather Barr is with the Human Rights Watch, and she has been documenting and chronicling what's happening with the civil liberties of women in Afghanistan. We're also joined and very privileged to have back with us Dr. Mehbouba Seraj. She's the president of the board of the Afghan Women's Network. She is in Kabul, and we are grateful for her courage to speak out at this difficult time. We're also joined on the program today by Mariam Atash, who's a human rights activist, an Afghan herself, and she is raising support groups for the rights and the infrastructural support to Afghan women. We will be amplifying her website in the course of the program. So if you want to support women, children, Afghan refugees, do click on her website and support those women and children. I'd like to start, if I may, with Dr. Mehbouba Seraj. When we were speaking last week, you said that the situation was very unclear. You were getting contradictory reports. There was a lot of confusion. Is the situation any clearer this time? Do we have a sense of what women are going through, what they're being allowed to do, what they're not being allowed to do?
Thank you for having me. Actually, from the last time that I did talk to you people until now, the situation has gotten a lot worse and a lot more complicated and a lot more, how should I say, completely, chaotic. So, yeah, because now the different kinds of news that they are coming, they are getting more. And actually, I don't think, as the saying goes, that the right hand really does not know what the left hand is doing. So it's really a bad situation. The people, the women, the men, the children, the ones that are leaving, the news that we are getting, what is happening, the Taliban or their foot soldiers that they are in the cities or in Kabul are doing one thing, their leaders are saying something else, the world is saying something else, and everything is really chaotic. As far as the world is concerned, I want to tell you, I don't think the world really, a whole lot of them, really know exactly what's happening in Afghanistan. There was a meeting on the human rights defenders of the world, I think international, in Geneva or somewhere, and some of my friends that joined there, a lot of the people, especially Europeans, they had absolutely no idea what was going on in Afghanistan. So this is the thing, and there are soldiers at the airport. We don't know. I don't think they know. We don't know. Some people are allowed. Some people are not allowed. It's really very bad, the whole thing. And the banks are closed. Some places, when the women want to go to do their job or go to work, they are not allowed to come in. Some places that The women are going to school, or if they are going to school, nobody's going to school actually yet. So it is very chaotic.
Are you still there, Mehbouba?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were saying in some cases women aren't being allowed to go out, to work, to banks, but yet we saw those incredible pictures of women leading the protests against the Taliban on Afghanistan Independence Day, and we can play those pictures. Women actually there, holding up the flag. In fact, the woman who was leading that march was meant to join our show, and she messaged us a while ago saying she now fears for her life. So this is the cost of those protests, and women are at the front line of those protests. Mehbouba, can you talk a little bit about women leading these protests and the importance of that flag there?
The importance of the flag is the most important. The flag is not the flag of the republic. The flag is the flag of Afghanistan. We've had this flag for hundreds of years. That's our identity. This is something that everybody in the Taliban should know. That's our flag. That's our identity. We don't want that flag to change. Once before that flag changed, there was a time when the communists came and the flag went red. I cannot tell you what a horrible day that was. And now again, the flag is gone, and this time it's gone white. Although it's written, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and I'm a Muslim, and I have to believe in that. But La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah is not my flag. The flag of Afghanistan is black, red, and green, and it has been like that for years. For hundreds of years. So we want that flag back. That's our flag, and we would like to have it.
And sorry. Go ahead.
Now, in some places, when that flag is raised, people are not saying, the Taliban are not saying anything. In some other areas, when that flag is raised by the people, then the people get beat up. So this is all shows, like really one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. So this is where the confusion is. This is where the void is. This is where the trouble is. It's very dangerous. Very dangerous, the situation.
And in what I'm hearing you say is in different parts of Afghanistan, the consequences for women is also being experienced differently.
Not only different parts of Afghanistan, different parts of Kabul city. Not only of Afghanistan. That's the trouble. It's not that there's in this province is this way, that province. That is also. But in Kabul city is the same way. In one part of the city is one thing, another part of the city is something else, another part of the city is something else, another part of the city is something else. So you can understand how horribly dangerous this whole thing is. So if the Taliban walk into an office and try to take the woman of that office or tell them not to work, what are we supposed to do? I don't know who these Taliban are. They're the real Taliban. They're the fake Taliban. Which group do they belong to? And what are we supposed to do? Accept? Not accept? What?
Yeah, and can I ask you, in the beginning when they took over, a lot was made, much was made of the fact that you had women interviewing the Taliban, you had women on the streets reporting, you had women on broadcast stations presenting shows, but then on the state broadcaster, we read reports that the woman was replaced with a man. So, again, the kind of changes that the Taliban claimed, are you seeing any signs of that change for women and children?
No. It's like, you saw they were there the first day, the second day they were gone the third. So it's like what kind of change? What this thing proves? Like what is going to be happening to us? If this is what's happening on the third day, you can imagine what's going to happen after a month. If that's what it is. So we don't know. And I want, and there's nobody around so we can actually sit down and talk and say, no, you're going the wrong way in here. You're never going to achieve anything in this country if this is what you continue to do. That's not the way it's supposed to be. They have to know that.
Yeah. One of the things, thank you, Dr. Seraj, I want to just take this to Heather and then to Mariam. One of the things that really strikes you about those images, even where the negotiations are happening, Heather, which is Hamid Karzai and Dr. Abdullah talking with a whole host of Taliban representatives, is that it is only men who are discussing the future of the country. And even though, Dr. Abdullah has sought to present some sort of semblance of hope in that dialogue, there are no women. The women are absent from a conversation about their own country. And we just heard Dr. Mehbouba Seraj make the point that there's no one to talk to. So there isn't, it's not as if the women are being invited to this dialogue table to have a conversation about their own lives. Now, Heather, you've spent the last week talking to many, many different Afghan women and stakeholders. What is your impression thus far?
I really echo a lot of what Mehbouba said. I think that the press conference that the Taliban gave on Tuesday, it's clear that they want international legitimacy, and they're trying to force themselves to say the right things on women's rights, because they know that that's part of what they need to try and at least shave some of the rough edges off to gain that kind of international legitimacy. But even in the press conference, even in those statements, they were still using the language they've been using for many years about women can participate in health and education in accordance with our rules. Women can enjoy all of their rights in the framework of Islam. And we know that their interpretation of the framework of Islam is a very fringe and strange one. I think that their actions don't match their words, even though their words themselves are not that strong. You've talked about the women being removed from the state television. There was also an incident of a woman presenter from Tolo TV, the most popular television network, being removed. And we're hearing stories about activists being visited at their homes and people asking them questions, which in a clear effort, I think, to intimidate them. And then, of course, we have the scenes at the airport and the fact that women's rights activists, as well as other rights activists, are unable to escape at this moment and are trapped there. And so I think the real important question, and these women who are protesting, like the guest that unfortunately was unable to join you today, are the most incredibly courageous people I've seen in my life. And so the question, I think, is, are they standing alone? Or is the international community standing with them? And I have a lot of questions about that, given the tone of the statements we're hearing from President Biden in the US, from NATO yesterday. There was a press conference sort of repeating the same language about how, it's really a shame that the Afghans weren't able to manage this situation, and really ignoring the role that the US and its partners have played in the last 20 years in Afghanistan, which has been a very, very hands-on role. One might almost say a colonial role. And so I think
I wanted to ask you about that, Heather. President Biden's second sort of articulation of his bumbling Afghanistan withdrawal was almost tone deaf. It was literally tone deaf. It sought to blame the Afghan military, the Afghan people. It was almost callous, some would say. And there's a growing cynicism that while there's a lot of talk about women in the media, that will not be the deciding factor for the world to rally behind women, Heather. Unfortunately.
I'm incredibly frightened, honestly, about how disengaged the international community seems to be. And I think, we're trying to use these different mechanisms that exist to try to sort of compel the world to pay attention and to care, and pressing for, a larger role for the UN, a greater presence, saying to the international community, look, if the Taliban is saying they've changed, they haven't earned any trust because of everything we know about their treatment of women from 1996 until not 2001, but until the present. And so if they ever want to earn any trust, they have to earn it by allowing people to be present and monitor what they're actually doing all across the country. And that should certainly include the UN, but Afghan human rights organizations and international human rights organizations like my own need to be allowed to operate in Afghanistan and need to have access to the entire country. And I don't know if that's realistic at all. I don't know if the international community will press for that. But if we leave these women who are protesting on their own, it will be a horrifying betrayal, particularly after the way that the situation of women under the Taliban last time was used to justify the invasion.
Absolutely. Mariam, how lonely is it to be an Afghan woman today? Because there is lip service by regimes across the world. There is some reportage in the media, and then there is concerns by groups like Heather's. But beyond that, nobody is holding the Taliban to account. Like I said, there aren't even women at the table or in that room where the future of Afghanistan is being determined today.
Yes, thank you for your question. I'd like to connect it to some of the questions that you raised to Mehbouba and Heather. And then my perspectives. I'm an Afghan-American woman born in Afghanistan, raised in the US, but I've been very active on US-Afghan relations. And I've lived in Afghanistan, part of my time between about 2018 to 2020 when the COVID pandemic hit. So I was able to work closely with Afghan women. And I really saw the progress that was being made with respect to education, women in government, women in leadership positions. They had their challenges, but a lot of progress was being made. A lot of organizations, NGOs, companies led by women. And, the Afghan men were open to it. I mean, the more education you have, the more openness you have in your society. And I think what's really disappointing and shocking, and I have to say this last week, I felt like part of my soul was just taken out from me, especially when I saw, as Mehbouba said, the flag was just taken down. That was the flag that represented the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So why is it being removed? Why are other issues not at the forefront? And I think we have to keep in mind the context, because women's issues become a context for what's going on politically and in the region. And when there's progress with women's rights and women's advancement, we'll see the economy doing better. We'll see security improving. Women had their challenges. There's patriarchy, there's discrimination, but at least they had a space to move the agenda forward. And what's interesting is when I was in Kabul and I was interviewing Afghan women leaders, two of my pieces are on YouTube called Under the Leading the Way banner. At that time, women were saying that the Taliban had women in their negotiations team. And that gave me some hope. I said, well, that's interesting. I hope that they continue that. So for those women to now be non-existent, was that a ploy? Was that some kind of decoy to make people think that they were going to have a different approach? But what we're really seeing here is a proxy war. This is what Afghans are saying. And sometimes I just want to be that voice that shares it with people. And your audience is, people in India. And, India's had a long friendship with Afghanistan. We have shared cultural ties and history between the Taj Mahal and musical instruments like tabla and rubab that were in Afghanistan. That's in Indian music. Afghans love Bollywood. Your country has hosted, I did some research, 16,000 students. You've offered 1,000 scholarships, helped rebuild Dalaman Palace and the Salma Dam. From the 1950s, under the former monarchy, there was a cooperation with India, friendship and ties. We had Afghan Hindus living side by side. Not to say that there wasn't problems, but they lived in peace. And what I'd like to see is Indian people not forgetting the US, forgetting Afghanistan. Right now, I'm so angry with how the US has handled this withdrawal, or I should say mishandled it, because the US took the lead. There was 35 countries in ISAF, and the US wanted to take the lead 10 years ago. And now there's less countries, although we had all these
just
different
look at those
embassies
pictures.
there.
I just want Mehbouba to come in and Mariam, that's so passionately spoken. Dr. Mehbouba, Seraj, look at all of those men. They're deciding the future of Afghanistan without a single woman in that room. And how does that make you feel today, Dr. Seraj? To be excluded from the conversation of your own destiny.
I find it, I used to be so angry and disgusted when they were even there, in the days when they were talking at the time of the presidencies, quote unquote, how much we pushed and pushed and pushed and did, everything in our power to have just a few women in there. So at least that the voices of women would count. You cannot imagine what kind of fights we put up, what kind of arguments we put up. They always wanted to have token women sitting in those rooms if they were sitting, and all quiet and listening to what these men were saying. And these men destroyed this country, and still they're destroying this country. They're destroying it because of their greed. They're destroying it because they're so selfish. They're destroying it because that's the only thing they can see is them and their needs and their wants and their I don't know, whatever. This country is dying, for God's sakes. Afghanistan is dying. It's dying. My Afghanistan is dying. And nobody cares. And I don't care how much I scream and yell. Nobody cares. What are we supposed to do to the world, for God's sakes? What did we do wrong? Really, what did we do wrong? I don't get it. Look at the faces of all of us. Look at the faces of these kids. Look at the hope. Look at the beauty. And then when they're leaving and they're going to the airport, look at that hurt in their eyes. Look at that, how lost they really are. Do you think it's really, does the world think that it's really funny and it's really fun to leave their own home and their country and run around and hang on the planes and die? Is this fun? Or for their children, that for their fear, they're passing it over the wall and giving it to the soldiers and saying, take this kid out? This is an atrocity. It really is. This is a human tragedy happening every single day. President Biden, what did you do? I keep on asking, and I don't know. What did he do, that man? Why? Why nobody thought of it? Why everybody was so short-visioned? Why the world does not see that we only have one earth and we are sharing it? In each one of these countries, they have that one country. They want to live in it. They want to live in peace. Let them do that, for God's sakes. Don't play these games and don't have these proxy wars. What are we going to do with these proxy wars? And it is proxy wars. And right now in Afghanistan, you don't know how many other countries are involved. Every single one of them are pulling Afghanistan in one direction. Every single one of them. It's like, excuse me? What are you trying to do? Kill us all? Well, why don't you try your stupid, atomic bombs like President, what was his name? Trump said. Like Trump said, I can kill 10 million people right now. Well, do it. Kill the bloody 10 million people. Put that bomb and kill the 10 million people. Let me see. This is not life. This is not life. And if in this country, that every single human being I come across, they want to leave Afghanistan, men and women that they never ever thought that they would leave this land. They want to leave it now. Why?
We are seeing that in those desperate images from the airport, when you say everyone's trying to leave. Heather, the exclusion of women from the national conversation and the international conversation, despite the media reports, there are men across the world and men within Afghanistan who are, determining the future and the fate of this country, and the women are going to pay the biggest price. The consequences are going to be the gravest for women, and we do not see any women in the dialogue, either externally or internally. I mean, that is just so problematic.
And
Sorry, Heather, you're on. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. No, I completely agree. And I've had the privilege and the honor of watching Mehbouba and her colleagues fight this fight that she described for a decade or more to be in the room when these discussions were happening. And they fought so hard, and they had some success, not nearly enough, but they had some success. We saw that when the US was negotiating with the Taliban over their deal, there were no women in the room, of course, no Afghan women. And when people asked the US representative Zalmay Khalilzad about women's rights, he was very dismissive. He said, oh, that's an issue for the intra-Afghan dialogue, as if this has nothing to do with the United States. When the intra-Afghan dialogue actually happened, there were 3 Afghan women on the government's negotiation team out of 20 people. And of course, they did an extraordinary job of trying their very best, not just to bring the voices of women and the concerns of women, but to, play a really important substantive role in all of the issues that were being discussed. But 3 women out of 20 women is not a fair position to put them in. There should be 10 women out of a delegation of 20 or perhaps more, because maybe we've got more sense than men have. And so to see, this very limited progress now erased overnight, and these same old men, as Mehbouba has said, who have done so much to destroy the country in the past, now deciding a new future, which is going to crush the dreams this generation of young women who grew up in the last 20 years thinking that the Taliban was a nightmare from their mother's time that thank goodness they had escaped.
Mariam, what is the most common feedback you're getting from women, especially women your age? Because, you know, one of the things I know Mehbouba pointed out the last time she was talking to me is there is an entire generation that has now grown up without knowing what the Taliban is like, and to expect them to readapt, to be pushed back into their homes, to not come out and work, to follow some sort of medieval code. This is not a life that they have known or would be willing to follow. But equally, so many Afghan women I've been speaking to, filmmakers, authors, poets, have had to go into hiding. They've had to be, their locations have had to be moved. They've almost gone underground.
Yes, it's really, really devastating because there was so much progress, as I mentioned, so much advancements that women had made. And it's like in 1 week, it was just wiped out. It feels like a tsunami came over Afghanistan and you're just losing all the bright minds, the new leaders for the future. I mean, Afghanistan is a very young population. It's still over 50% under the age of 18. So the more education you'd have, the more progress that could be made. And what I'm hearing from Afghan women is there's a lot of fear because there's a lot of uncertainty of what's going to happen tomorrow. How is it going to be? And a children's program that Nooristan Foundation supports, I got video footage just today of the first day that they're supposed to be back in school. And only 3 of the students of the class of 25 came. 2 were little girls and 1 was a little boy. And the teacher took some video and said, "What do you feel about being here today?" And they all said that, "I'm really scared." And I felt so bad for them. It just really, I felt like my heart was breaking because I felt they're already dealing with poverty. These were street children. We were trying to give them remedial education. And on top of that, they have to deal with this new unknown and people just leaving the country. And the emails I get and stories of people wanting to leave, we're just experiencing a brain drain. And I just really blame this on the international community. Where is the UN? Why haven't we heard the UN? We don't need statements, just issued by countries condemning things. We need action. And so this is something that, Afghanistan was supposed to be a model of international cooperation, and it still can be. That's why I urge countries like India for the people not to forget the people. Let's put aside the government. Sometimes we cannot control what they're doing, but people should not forget to help other people, because what I'm seeing is a trend. Either people care and have a heart for humanity and do something, or they turn a blind eye and they just allow bad things to happen. And on the good end, I see a lot of people wanting to help. The level of support that I've seen even amongst Americans, they are very disgusted at what this administration has done. So that's my only ray of hope. Is
I just want to say to our audience that if you would like to help either Mariam's organization or Dr. Mehbouba Seraj, please do look them up. We can bring up, there it is, the Nooristan Foundation is where Mariam leads her work, and the Afghanistan Women's Network is where Dr. Mehbouba Seraj is the president of the board. So do please help in any way that you can. Before I give Mehbouba Seraj the last word, Heather, Mariam makes the important point, do something. But what can be done? The fact is that one suggestion that has come is do not recognize this regime. But you already have powerful countries like China and Russia continuing as if it's just business as usual. And there's a sense that the Americans are pretty much going to bend before time is up. You have Boris Johnson already saying we'll do business with the Taliban if it's necessary, and so on. So, there's a sense that women's issues are being treated almost as a sidelight or a sidebar in this conversation, Heather.
So, yeah, I agree with everything you've said. I think that, as Mariam has suggested as well, I think we need to turn our eyes to the UN and look at how we can pressure our own governments to push for a more robust UN presence and a UN presence that can actually deter abuses and help to protect these women who are coming out on the streets and exercising their right to be heard, their right to be in public, their right to express themselves. And this is the way that we hopefully maintain some level of preventing some of the violence in Afghanistan and also keep the world's eyes on Afghanistan. So I think in terms of what people can do, they can push their government to support greater UN involvement. and more sustained international involvement through the UN in Afghanistan. I mean, I read an article in Reuters the other day saying that the White House is betting that people are going to move on and forget about Afghanistan quite quickly, and it's not going to actually cause any lasting harm to Biden. Like Mariam, I am an American also, and I'm hopeful a little bit that that's wrong, that the White House is wrong about that, because I remember very clearly the days after 9/11. We watched the towers collapse. I went to a peace vigil, and days later we were seeing these images of burqas being used to tell us that this was why the correct response to 9/11 was to invade Afghanistan. And so I do think that it's very deep in Americans' minds anyway, that that this conflict is about women and is our responsibility. And I think Americans and people in other countries that sent troops and sent aid may remember this, even if their governments don't.
Dr. Mehbouba, Seraj, given how the world is reacting and your sense of cynicism and rage that nobody's really doing anything, what are you most fearful of on behalf of women of Afghanistan today that you think it's important for the audience everywhere listening to this? I'll give you the last word, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I want to tell you one thing. It's not only for the women of Afghanistan, believe me. It's for the women, men, children of Afghanistan. That's what it is. I have seen so much fear in the eyes of the men of Afghanistan that is breaking my heart. I've seen so many tears in the eyes of the men of Afghanistan because of their flag that's just killing me. And then the world is just there, and they're really hoping for the day when everything is going to be forgotten and everything will go back to normal. I want to tell you one thing. This is not going to be one of those times that this is going to happen. Believe me. If the world right now does not sit down and think of what is going to be good for Afghanistan, for the world, for the women, for the men, for everybody, this is going to blow up in a way that nobody has ever seen it. I can tell you that. And what really, where I am actually putting the emphasis is not the governments, because I am fed up with governments. I want the people to do something. The people who can bring about changes in their governments. Don't forget Afghanistan, because if you forget Afghanistan, you're going to see something so similar to in your own countries. So similar that it will make you absolutely not believe on what's going on. Look at the way the world is changing in 1 week. I had a country that his name was Afghanistan with a different flag, with a different everything. Today, I don't have that. Can you believe it? I don't have that country anymore. I don't. Not only me, nobody. Nobody in this country has it. So please, let's work it together. I'm worried that they're going to come and make these deals. And these deals are going to be hijacked by Pakistan. I can promise you that it's going to be hijacked by Pakistan. Right now, the world is going to have a meeting and it's going to be hijacked by Pakistan. Just watch it, if we allow it. If they allow Pakistan to hijack the deals, we are doomed. We are doomed. Because they are going to do it. Yeah. And then what's going to happen in Afghanistan is for everybody to guess. There's going to be blood running on the streets of this country. There's going to be chaos. So let's tell the world to watch us. Watch us very carefully. Watch us all the time. And please don't stop watching. Don't stop reporting. Don't stop asking questions. And don't stop informing people what is happening in Afghanistan. Because then in another big meeting somewhere in New York or somewhere in Geneva, if the international community, sits there and does not really know what is going on really in Afghanistan, that would be such a shame. That would be such a shame.
Absolutely. I literally every time I hear you, Mehbouba, it's just goosebumps, because I feel your pain and your rage, and we promise you that we will keep our focus on what's happening to Afghanistan for as long as we humanly can. Thank you for your courage, I know you're still there in Kabul, so I hope you stay very safe. To Mariam and Heather, thank you. And we will continue as much as we can to amplify the voices of the people of Afghanistan and the women in particular who are being excluded from a conversation about their country's future. Thank you, everybody, and stay safe. And thank you to our audience. See you soon. And in the meantime, have a great and safe weekend. Goodbye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalists.